The photograph went up on a Thursday in late February of 2021. Matt Roloff stands in front of a finished log cabin. He is holding a large axe. He is looking straight down the lens with an expression somewhere between satisfaction and challenge. The caption gave it a name and a date and a builder. Grandpa's Cabin, established 2021, built by Matt Roloff. 4 words in that caption are doing all the work. Built by Matt Roloff. Not built at Roloff Farms, not built for the grandkids, built by. He wanted the byline. He had earned it. The structure behind him in that photograph represented roughly 9 months of work, and he had done that work himself. The axe is a prop, and everybody knows it. You do not build a log cabin in 2020 with an axe. You build it with a chainsaw, an excavator, and a great deal of measuring. But the axe says what the photograph is for. It is not a construction record. It is a statement about who the man holding it believes himself to be, taken at 59, at the end of a year in which a great deal had been taken away from him. Rewind to how it started, because the announcement is almost better than the finish. May 14, 2020. Most of the United States was shut. Restaurants closed, schools closed, offices empty, an entire country sitting indoors trying to work out what to do with time it had not asked for. Matt posted Instagram stories of himself operating heavy machinery on the farm. He was shouting at the camera in the way he does when a project has got hold of him. His question to the camera, roughly, what does a man do in the middle of a pandemic? Build a cabin. Somewhere else to go. The camera swung round to a stack of logs waiting on the ground. That was the whole announcement. No plan shared, no renderings, no timeline. A 59-year-old man with a pile of timber and an excavator telling the internet what he intended to do with his lockdown. Now consider what he was actually proposing, because the scale of it gets lost. Matt has built a great deal on that property over 3 decades. A castle, a pirate ship, a western town with a saloon and a jail, a treehouse. Those structures are why hundreds of thousands of people have driven out to Helvetia in October. But those were built the ordinary way, over years, in stages, with construction professionals doing significant portions of the work, while Matt directed, designed, and pitched in. This one he wanted alone. That is a substantial thing to want at 59. Log construction is among the most physically punishing forms of building there is. Logs are heavy, awkward, and unforgiving. Notching them so they seat properly requires precision with a chainsaw at close quarters. Raising walls means lifting weight to height. Roofing means working at pitch. None of it is gentle. And Matt has diastrophic dysplasia, 15 corrective surgeries behind him, roughly 700 days of childhood spent in hospital beds, a spine and a set of joints that have been rebuilt, and a body that hurts more than he generally lets on when a camera is running. The excavator is the key to how it was possible. Matt cannot lift a log. An excavator can lift anything. He has been operating heavy machinery on that farm for decades, and he is genuinely good at it. And a skilled operator can place a log with more precision than 4 men with ropes. So the build was not a display of physical strength. It was a display of leverage. A man who could not do the work with his arms, doing it with hydraulics instead, which is arguably a better story. That pattern runs through everything Matt has ever made. He is not strong, and he has never pretended to be. What he has is an unusually good sense of how to get a machine to do what a body cannot, and 35 years of practice at it. The treehouse, the western town, the castle, the pumpkin operation, all of it was built by a 4-foot man who worked out the mechanical route to each problem. A person who grows up unable to reach things develops a permanent interest in leverage. Matt turned that into a career, then a farm, and then a cabin. It is also worth registering that this was a man building his own retreat during a period when nobody could go anywhere. The pandemic did something particular to people who define themselves by movement and projects. Matt travels. He speaks. He runs a farm that fills with strangers every autumn. Take all of that away at once, and what remains is a large, quiet property and a lot of hours. Some people in that position deteriorated. Matt found a 9-month task that could only be done outdoors, alone, with a machine. Read the pandemic announcement again with that in mind, and it sounds less like enthusiasm and more like a man giving himself somewhere to put the year. The work ran through the second half of 2020. The timing was, in a bleak way, perfect. Everything else on the farm had slowed. Tours were curtailed. Family gatherings were off. The production schedule had been reworked around distancing rules. For the first time in 14 years, there was no film crew, no visitor season, and nowhere anyone needed him to be. He went out and worked. He ran the excavator to bring logs to the site. He picked them individually for size and soundness. He notched them, seated them, raised the walls course by course, put the roof on, set the windows, hung the door. 9 months. Mostly alone, out in the trees, through the strangest year most people alive can remember. He was also doing it without an audience, which for Matt is genuinely unusual. Almost every other structure on that farm went up either on camera or in front of paying visitors. This one had neither. There was no crew filming the process and nobody walking past to be impressed. The Instagram stories were the whole of the coverage, and they were intermittent. For most of those 9 months, the only person who knew how it was going was the man doing it. Where he put it tells you as much as what he built. The cabin sits back in a wooded section of the property, invisible from the main entrance and nowhere near the route visitors take. To reach it, you walk into the trees. That is deliberate. Everything else Matt has built on that farm was built to be seen. The castle, the ship, the western town, those are attractions, designed for photographs, positioned for foot traffic. The cabin was built to be found. He wanted the feeling of somewhere remote without the inconvenience of actual remoteness. Walk 5 minutes into the woods and you are in a log cabin with no view of anything modern. Walk 5 minutes back and you are at the farmhouse. It is a wilderness retreat with a short commute, which is exactly what a man in his 60s with a working farm actually needs. There is a practical detail in that placement too. Woodland gives you shade, wind protection, and a natural boundary, which matters if you are building somewhere children will run around unsupervised. It also puts the structure far enough from the working parts of the farm that a sleepover is not interrupted at 6 in the morning by machinery. Matt has been laying out that property for 35 years. He does not put buildings anywhere by accident. Then there is the name, which was not casual. He could have called it Matt's Cabin. He could have called it the Roloff Cabin, tying it to the brand. He could have called it the Lodge or the Retreat or any of the neutral names people give to structures like this. He called it Grandpa's Cabin. That word defines the purpose. This was not a man cave and it was not a workshop. It was a place for grandchildren to come. Sleepovers, stories, games, time with their grandfather in a building made for that and nothing else. When he finished it in February 2021, he had 4 grandchildren, Jackson, Ember, Lila, and Bodie, none of them older than 4, 2 of them still effectively babies, and not one of them capable of appreciating a log cabin yet. More were coming, Radley and Mateo later that year, Josiah in 2022, Mirabella in 2024, 8 now, and the cabin was built with all of them in mind before most of them existed. The caption said as much, a line to the grandkids about good times ahead, and a promise that the best of it was still coming. That is a man building for a future he has decided to expect. February 2021 was not an obvious month for optimism about anything. Vaccines were barely rolling out, the farm's next season was uncertain, his marriage was 2 years gone, and his ex-wife was 6 months from remarrying. He wrote, "Best is yet to come anyway," and then put a building underneath it. There is something worth drawing out about that word choice, because it points at a shift in how Matt understood himself. For most of his adult life, the identity on offer was patriarch, head of the family, owner of the farm, the one who decides. Little People Big World ran on that framing for years, and a good deal of the family conflict since 2022 comes from the 4 adult children declining to accept it any longer. Grandfather is a different job entirely. A grandfather has no authority to speak of. He cannot make decisions about the children, cannot set the rules, cannot overrule anybody. What he can do is be a place they want to come to. Naming a building Grandpa's Cabin is choosing the second role over the first, and doing it in wood, permanently, where everybody can read it. Look at what else was happening in his life while he built it, because the timing is not accidental. In 2020, Amy sold him her portion of the farm and moved into her own house in Hillsboro. 29 years of marriage and 30 years of shared ownership of that ground ended on a title document. Matt started the cabin that same year. There is a version of a newly single 59-year-old man rattling around 109 acres that had been half somebody else's, and it is not a good version. Plenty of men in that position stop. They stay in the house they built for a family that has dispersed, and they let the property manage them. Matt went into the woods and built something new by hand. The cabin was finished in February of 2021. Amy married Chris Marek that August. Matt had spent the intervening period producing a physical answer to the question of what he was now, still a builder, and now specifically a grandfather. Whether he thought about it in those terms is unknowable. What is on the record is a photograph of a man with an axe in front of a cabin he made, taken 6 months before his ex-wife remarried on the same property. There is one more layer to the timing that is easy to miss. He finished in February 2021, and Amy's wedding was in August 2021, held on this same property, in a barn, with Matt's blessing and 146 guests. So the cabin existed before that day, which means that on the afternoon his ex-wife married another man on ground he now owned outright. There was a building in the trees a short walk away with his name and his new role carved into the caption of the photograph announcing it. Nobody has ever suggested he planned it that way, and it would be unfair to imply he did. But a man who wanted somewhere of his own on that farm by the summer of 2021 had somewhere of his own by the summer of 2021. Inside, from what has appeared on the show, it is a main gathering room, sleeping space, and rustic furnishing. Wood is the whole aesthetic. Nothing is trying to be a modern holiday home. The word is retreat, not resort. And it became the room where the most exposed conversation of the show's final years took place. Season 25, an episode that aired early in 2024. Chris Marek and a mutual friend, Ty, came out to the cabin for dinner. 3 men, a table, food, drink. Partway through, Ty put it to him that he seemed frightened of something. Matt said he was petrified. Not of Karen, he could not picture himself with anybody else, but of what a wedding might do to what the two of them already had. That segment became one of the most discussed of the season, and the setting is why it happened at all. Consider the conditions. No women present, no wives, no fiancé, no daughters-in-law. A small room, a private building, a friend willing to ask a direct question, and a host who had built the walls himself. Men of Matt's generation do not usually say things like petrified out loud. They say it in a cabin in the woods at a table with 2 other men and no audience they are aware of. The irony that arrived later is hard to miss. He said he was afraid of marriage changing what he and Karen had. In July of 2025, the engagement ended without a wedding ever taking place. Whatever he feared, it was not what actually happened. That conversation is now permanently attached to the building. It is worth sitting with what that scene reveals about the friendship as well as about Matt. Chris Marek is married to Matt's ex-wife. On paper, he is the least likely person in Oregon for Matt to confide in about his fear of a second marriage. There are men Matt has known for 40 years who did not get that conversation. But Chris had done the thing Matt was contemplating. He had been a lifelong bachelor into his late 50s and then married. He had crossed the exact bridge Matt was standing on, and he had done it recently enough to remember. So the person best qualified to answer Matt's question happened to be his ex-wife's husband, and Matt was clear-eyed enough to ask him. Since completion, the cabin has done the job it was named for. Grandchildren have stayed. Friends and family have gathered. Matt has used it as somewhere to go when he wants the farm to leave him alone. It has not become a public attraction. Visitors during pumpkin season do not tour it. Some people on private tours have been shown it from a distance. Otherwise, it stays where it was built, out of sight, invitation only. There is a quiet economy to that arrangement. Roloff Farms is, at this point, one of the most photographed private properties in America. During October, it processes tens of thousands of people. Nearly everything on it has been filmed, posted, toured, or sold access to. Grandpa's cabin is the exception. It is the one structure Matt built that he has largely kept back. For a man whose life has been public since 2006, having one building that most people have never seen the inside of is not a small thing. Fans have asked whether it might eventually be rented. It is a reasonable question given that Matt turned the main farmhouse into a short-term rental. He has announced nothing, and the balance of opinion among viewers runs against it. The general view being that some things on that farm should not have a nightly rate. Which brings up the question that hangs over all of it now. Matt has been trying to sell 16 acres of Roloff Farms, including the main house, for several years. Whether Grandpa's cabin sits inside that parcel or on the 90 acres he is keeping has not been made clear publicly. If it goes with the sale, a stranger inherits it. He has said nothing about that either way, which is probably sensible while a listing is active. A cabin thrown in with the sale is a selling point. A cabin carved out of it is a complication. That is the fate of everything he has built out there eventually. The castle, the ship, the western town, the cabin, all of them will outlive his ownership and probably his life. Structures do that. It is the reason people build them. A man who spent 700 days of his childhood in hospital beds, unable to run or climb or play, has spent his adult life putting permanent things on a piece of ground in Oregon. There is a straightforward reading of that, and it does not require much psychology. A child who cannot move much builds in his head. An adult who can finally command a machine builds for real, and keeps building, long past the point where anybody needs him to. Whoever holds the deed in 50 years, the cabin will still be standing in those trees. Somebody will still have to be told who made it. And the answer will still be a 4-foot man with an excavator who decided, during the strangest year of the century, that what the situation called for was a cabin. Would you stay at Grandpa's cabin if Matt ever opened it up? Or should it stay a family space? Does it change how you see the build to know he did it the year Amy sold him her half of the farm? And do you think that dinner with Chris and Ty could have happened anywhere else?